Ay, naka-start na siya. Okay, it's starting already. So we will have the discussion for the genetically modified organisms related to science, health, and politics. No? So pag-usapan natin dito, ano kaya yung effect, no? The development of the genetically modified organisms have a lot of positive, no? Positive results coming from different researches. But at the same time, hindi natin maiwasan na merong mga taong nag-o-oppose, no? They are opposing the production and the consuming of genetically modified organisms because of health reasons, ethical reasons, right? We are playing God, and yun nga, overall the evaluation of the community at yung kanyang long-term effect, no, sa ating environment and sa mga tao mismo na nagko-consume nitong mga products, foods, and crops and living organisms na genetically modified. Okay. So, I would just like to give an announcement. Ipopost na po later on ang schedule ng inyong examination as well as the coverage. And also, kasama din doon yung types of test ng ating exam and the number of items and the total points, no, of the examination. So, I think 80 plus yung inyong number of items for finals and a total of 125 points. Okay, so you have 1 hour and 30 minutes to answer the examination. And also, ang schedule natin is on May 30, Monday. So, medyo matagal-tagal pa, next week pa. You still have time to review your notes. Monday at 5:30 to, or is it 5 p.m. to 6:30. So, kindly check na lang, class. That will be posted later on sa ating classroom. Okay? So, I would just like to reiterate the importance of submitting the permit. So, yung permit ninyo is very important kasi nga po ang ismis natin is late, no? Hindi siya updated. Kaya nga, bakit ba nagpapasubmit si ma'am ng ating permit sa GCR? Because that will be used as a double checker, no? I-check natin ulit because kung late nagbayad yung student, that will not be reflected on their ismis pa. So, ang mangyayari dyan, wala pa rin siyang permit sa ISME. So, hindi siya dapat mag-take ng exam, right? But if meron ka ng nakabayad ka na, you have the receipt, no, coming from the business office or any receipt coming from the bayad centers or from the banks na you can submit that sa ating GCR para nga mabigyan na kita ng exam. Okay? As long as may mabigay ka na proof na nagbayad ka, you are accepted and you will be given an examination. And at the same time, 20 points po yung submission natin ng permit sa ating CS. So, kung hindi ka nag-submit ng permit mo, wala ka ng exam, na-minusan ka pa ng 20 points doon sa inyong class standing. Okay? So, another reminder, meron po tayong tinatawag na exemption sa klase na ito because STS is a minor subject. So, we have exemption forms that will be given to you next meeting. So, kung nakaabot ang grade mo ng 90 plus nung midterm and ang CS mo ngayong finals is nakaabot din ng 90 plus, you can get the opportunity to not take the exam uh, ngayong May 30. So, ang mangyayari dyan, ang grade mo nung midterm, i-add doon sa class standing mo ngayong final divided by 2, that will be your final grade. Okay, so meron bang mga may balak na maging exempted ngayon sa exam natin from your class? May gustong ma-exempt or wala? Lahat? So, lahat kayo ma-exempt. Kay sila Miss Kapawaan, si Miss Ong nag-raise ng hand. Okay, so malaman niyo yan because I will be giving you your class standing next they call this, next Thursday. So, ibigay ko na mga class standing ng mga students na pwedeng mag-apply for exemption. And then, kayo na ang bahalang mag-decide if gusto ninyo yung grade na ma-receive ninyo because I already gave you your midterm grade. So, ang ibigay ko na lang is CS. So, kayo na bahala mag-compute if gusto mo yung grade na, kinalalabasan, eh, you can be exempted. So, alam na ba ang process ng exemption? Naka-try na ba kayo before ng exemption or bago ba kayo sa mga exemption? First time niyo ba or magkaroon ng minor or naka-try na kayo noon? Do you know the process? Hello? Alam na? Okay, sige, very good. So ang gagawin ko na lang is I will send you the form kung nag-oo ka sa exemption. And then kayo nang bahala, magbalik sa akin 'no nung response ng BO which is in PDF form. And at the same time, kahit na exempted ka, hindi ka po sa exam, hindi ka po exempted sa submission of permit. Eh, kasi dapat mayroong, proof na nagbayad ka po 'no. Dapat pa ring magbayad kahit na exempted. So, dapat yung mga ma-exempt po, you must still submit your permit. So, kung meron na kayong permit, puwede na ninyong i-submit para diretso na 'no, wala na kayong problemahin. Okay, so that's all. I think na-check ko na yung inyong mga activities. So, ang gawin ko na lang is solving na lang, computation na lang. And then ibigay ko na sa inyo ang CS ninyo, okay? So, let us start. Okay, let's start with the discussion. Genetically modified organisms. Okay, lesson objectives natin for today is to identify the issues on genetically modified organisms, discuss the different implications and impact of the GMOs, and create a research paper on the impact of the GMO. So itong research paper natin, hindi na natin yan siya gawin. I converted that in a form of activity na lang. So I let you choose one type of GMO and then binigay ninyo doon kung ano ang importance niya sa society, no, ng ating or in our current society. Okay? So, we have here an example, no? Sino itong who is this woman we are seeing right now? So, this woman is named, so andyan na po yung kanyang pangalan, si Rosalie Elasos, no? She is actually an overseas Filipino worker. She lives in Singapore at that time, no? And now she is a farmer. So, she actually attended the Integrated Pest Management Farmers Field School and doon niya nakilala itong or nalaman itong about sa BT corn. Okay? So, BT corn is a GMO that is resistant to the destructive Asian corn borer. Eh, ano ba yung corn borer natin? This is one type of moth, no? Moth siya, pero in its early form, isa siyang worm. And it is actually a pest for grains such as corn. So kinakain nila yung mga corn ng farmers. So, resistant diyaan 'no, yung ating GMO na BT corn. And, very successful 'no, ito si Mrs. Rosalie Ilasos because she actually volunteered for the demo testing and, nagkaroon ng positive result yung kanyang pag-volunteer because, she actually got a higher yield of crops compared sa dati niyang normal na harvest. So, dati is 4.2 tons per hectare lang ang kanyang na-harvest. But with the application of the BT corn, nakakuha siya ng 7.2 tons per acre. So, ganun karami. You will see here the improved appearance of the corn. Ito po ang BT corn natin, very healthy. While this is the non-BT corn. So, puno siya ng damage by different pests and molds. Okay, so genetic engineering has been with the human society since the selective breeding was introduced to humankind and when animals were domesticated. So we started with initially we started with domesticating animals back in the day nung hindi pa tayo masyadong developed and we started playing with our domesticated animals in terms of taking care of them and nagkaroon ng selective breeding. So when we say selective breeding, Ito yung pinipili natin ang mga parents ng ating mga domesticated animals. So if for example, gusto mo yung mga characteristics nitong male and female mo na domesticated animal. So you will let them breed, no, together to produce an offspring with more desirable characteristics. So yun yung selective breeding. Pumipili ka ng may mga magagandang characteristics to produce a more desirable type of offspring. Okay? And then, after ng ating selective breeding, okay, in 1951, Jack Williamson, so ito po siya, he actually coined the term genetic engineering. Pero hindi ito siya isang type ng engineer or doctor, no? Because he's a writer, okay? Or author po siya ng science fiction novel na Dragon's Island. So doon sa kanyang libro, ginamit niya yung term na genetic engineering. Pero at that time, wala pang genetic engineering. Kumbaga pa ano pa lang siya, science fiction pa lang siya at that time, no? And years before, or it occurred during years before the actual research findings of the DNA's role in heredity and its structure, or yung double helix developed by Watson and Crick, no, yung model natin na double helix. So before pa natuklasan ang double helix na ating DNA, okay, and its role in heredity, nakuha niya na yung term na genetic engineering. So what is genetic engineering, no? It is a process, or you can also call it as genetic modification, meaning may binabago ka doon sa genes, no? Is a process that uses laboratory-based technologies to alter the DNA makeup of an organism. This may involve changing a single base pair. So, who can still remember, ano nga yung dalawang types natin ng nitrogenous bases? Anyone from the class, if you still remember, sa dati ninyong mga lessons? Ano yung two types natin ng nitrogenous bases? Starting with letter P, no? Both of them starts with letter P. Okay, maalala pa ba? Biochemistry. So, tapos na kayo ng biochem. First year. Okay, correct, Miss Ong. Purine and ano pa yung isa? Okay, pyrimidine. Pyrimidine and purine. Sige, so 3 points for Miss Ong. Sige, who can remember what are the pyrimidine bases? Anong mga nitrogenous bases ang na-classify as pyrimidine base? So dito sa example natin meron tayong AT, CG, yes, Miss Kapauan. Okay, cytosine, thymine, pwede ring uracil. Okay, so 'di ba sa RNA natin, palitan natin yung T ng U or thymine ng uracil. So, thymine, cytosine, and uracil under the purine bases. How about the purine bases? So, ano na lang ang natira? So, 3 points also for Miss Kapawan. Yes, Miss Ariel? Okay, adenine and guanine for the DNA. Correct. So, naalala niyo pa ninyo. Very good. Okay. So, yan. We are, in genetic engineering, we're playing with this nitrogenous bases. Kumbaga pa, binabago natin na yung DNA sequence ng ating mga organisms. Pwedeng microorganism, pwede rin namang bigger, no? Organisms such as different animals and plants. Okay? So, pwede kang mag-change ng base pairs. Pwede ka ring mag-delete, no? Deleting a region of the DNA or adding a new segment of DNA. Okay, so methods of plant breeding. So, this one, kanina meron tayong selective breeding. Ngayon, meron tayong term na tinatawag na plant breeding. So, in a plant breeding, meron ka ditong donor of variety of DNA strands. Okay, so ito yung desired gene mo. And then, ito yung bibigyan mo ng DNA strand na yan, the recipient variety DNA strand. So, in the plant breeding, Ang ginagawa mo diyan is you are placing more than one DNA or gene 'no, into the recipient. So kung nakita ninyo A, B ito siya, A, B, A. And then itong recipient natin puro C. So gusto mong kunin yung gene na letter B at ilipat siya dito sa ating recipient. But during the plant breeding, hindi specifically ang letter B lang ang na-add 'no, merong mga letter A na nasali, okay. So, the new variety DNA strand may contain 'no, or more than one gene aside from the desired gene 'no, maraming nasali. So, hindi siya very specific. But in terms of genetic engineering, okay, kung ito yung donor organism mo at, itong bilang na desired gene ang gusto mong ilipat, you can actually edit that into the recipient 'no, na wala ng ibang nasaling genes na hindi naman desirable. So only a desired gene is transferred to a location in the recipient genome. So mas effective 'no, yung ating genetic engineering kasi nga by narrowing the introduction to one or few identified genes, scientists can introduce the desired characteristics without also introducing genes responsible for unwanted characteristics. So, yung gusto mo lang talaga na gene ang ipapasa mo doon sa kabilang organism. Okay. So, let us talk about genetically modified organisms. Okay? So, ang GMO natin is the term used for an organism created through genetic engineering, meaning ang GMO is the product of genetic engineering. And according to the World Health Organization, it defines GMO as an organism, either plant, animal, or microorganism in which the genetic material DNA has been altered in a way that does not occur naturally by mating or natural recombination. Meaning itong mga changes dito sa organism na ito is hindi mo ma-achieve no by using sexual reproduction or natural asexual reproduction. So hindi siya naturally na nag-o-occur no in the environment or in the ecosystem. So human made talaga siya. Purely human made inside the laboratory. Okay? For example, this one, ito yung bacteria natin. We have a desired gene within this bacteria. So, kumuha tayo, ginawa natin, nagkaroon ng DNA extraction and isolation. You extracted and isolated the desired gene from the bacteria, and through cloning and designing genes and through transformation, inattach mo sa gitna no, ng genes ng inyong recipient plant yung desirable gene from the bacteria. Tapos kinulture mo siya, yung cell ng plant, pinarami mo sa culture media no, by using microbiology. And then finally, you have produced a genetically modified plant. Okay. So making a GMO plant step by step. So identify a trait of interest. For example, mamili ka doon sa mga plants, no? Saan sa kanila ang, for example, mas nagsusurvive no, against harsh environment. Sino sa kanila ang may pinakamagandang growth. Okay, and then pipiliin mo yun. You will isolate that plant's gene or genetic trait of interest. And then you will uh, edit, no? Insert the desired trait into the new genome. Through, pwede kang gumamit ng insertion of plasmids or pwede rin namang you will use a gene gun no, for the DNA. And then, finally, you will carefully control the growth of these GMO plants on chambers, monitor daily, no? Okay, for the growth and the replication. So ultimate growth conditions are determined at this stage. Okay, so these are also examples of genetically modified organisms. So ang tawag sa kanila, they are transgenic organisms, meaning a type of genetically modified organism that contains genes from a different species. Okay. So let us go to the GMOs in food and agricultural industries. No? Let's take a look. Ano kaya yung mga examples ng mga GMO natin that is being used in agriculture and production of food. Okay? So the first example here, according to the Center of Ecogenetics and Environmental Health, or CEEH, no, they identify the following roles of GMOs in the food and agricultural industries. So ang pinakauna natin diyan is pest resistance. Nakakatulong daw, no, the GMO, or genetically modified organisms, actually help in making products that are very resistant to pests, no? So ang example natin diyan, we have the BT corn, the very famous BT corn. I think itong BT corn or BT crops natin, sila na yung pinaka-common na ginagawang example 'pag sinabi mong GMO or genetically modified organism. BT corn agad ang lumalabas. So BT corn, okay, ang kanyang, it came from, no, the DNA or the genome of BT corn has been modified with the gene of yung microorganism natin tinatawag na Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, so sino pa ba ang nakaalala ng microbiology? Okay, Bacillus thuringiensis. So this is a soil bacterium, okay, that produces proteins which is toxic to corn borers. Okay, so yung nabanggit ko kanina na corn borers, which are basically moths, no? Before sila mag-turn into a mature moth, so they are initially worms na kumakain ng grains ng ating corn crops. So ang ginagawa diyan is kinukuha yung DNA from the Bacillus thuringiensis at nililipat doon sa corn. And the corn will not be affected by any type of pest, no? Especially yung ating corn borers. Okay. Another role ng ating GMO in the agriculture and food area is our virus resistance. Okay, so pwede ka nang makagawa ng mga crop mo or fruits, no? Example natin papaya that is resistant to any type of virus. So ang example natin dyan is the GM papaya or rainbow papaya. So this type of papaya is very affected by what we call PRSB. So, baka mag-wonder kayo klasa kung saan ko kinukuha itong my information. These informations can be found in your PDF material. So, I suggest, no, before taking the exam that you read your materials, yung mga binigay kong materials sa LMS classroom natin. Because it actually contains a lot of information that will not be found in your PowerPoint presentation, because our main goal in the PowerPoint presentation is to show you images, no, for additional information. So if you are wondering, you can follow the material right now. If na-print nyo na, you can follow me. Ayan. So, itong papaya po natin is very, yun nga, susceptible to the ring spot virus, no, papaya ring spot virus. Okay? So, this one is very detrimental to papaya plants. So, kumuha sila ng protein from this virus, from PRSV, and the virus was introduced to the papaya plant, no, through plant tissue. So, ang ginawa dito, parang nag-vaccination, kumbaga, no? If merong vaccine sa tao, meron ding mga vaccine sa plant. So, tinurukan natin ng protein ng virus yung papaya, and it turns out that it made the papaya resistant to the virus itself. Okay, so para siyang it has an effect like the vaccines in humans. So that is also one example of genetically modified organisms. Okay, another role natin sa agriculture is you can produce uh, genetically modified organisms that are tolerant to herbicides. Okay? So, anong example natin dito? We have the Roundup Ready soybean. Okay? So, itong soybean na ito, nilalagyan siya ng glyphosate, no? A herbicide for weeds that was introduced to soybeans, making it tolerant to the herbicide itself. Farmers then can spray the herbicide, killing the weeds but not the soybeans. So kasi ang problem natin dyan, maraming tumutubo na weeds sa kanilang farm area. And then, para mapatay yung weeds na yun, dapat lagyan sila ng herbicide. But the problem is the soybeans or the products themselves are affected by the herbicide. So, kaya nakaproduce ng Roundup Ready soybean. So, yan po ang kanilang appearance. Okay, number 4 role is fortification. Okay, so these are genetically modified plants fortified with certain minerals. So, kumbaga pa, nilagyan mo na ng vitamin itong mga crop na ito. So, ang example natin is this one. Kung nakita ninyo, the rice is golden. Kaya nga ang name niya is golden rice. Okay? Beta-carotene, a precursor of vitamin A, was actually introduced dito sa mga rice na ito through biosynthesis genes. So, ano ba yung biosynthesis? Okay, when you say biosynthesis, this is the generation of natural products, presumably pwedeng mga active compounds no, na nanggaling from enzymatic reactions. So, who can still remember ano nga ang enzyme? Sige, balik tayo sa biochem. If you still remember, what are enzymes? What is the function of an enzyme inside our cells, no? The cells in the body. Sige, for 3 points. So, any idea kung ano ang enzyme? So, sino po ang teacher ninyo sa biochem? Biochem. Biochemistry ito siya. Enzyme. Yes? Anyone from the class? Yes, Mr. Suan. Okay, very good. Okay, so pag sinabing enzyme, okay, thank you, Mr. Suan. You have 3 points now. Nakalista na dito. Okay, when we say enzymes, it speeds up no chemical reactions inside the body. Bakit ba kailangan nating pabilisin yung chemical reactions in order to produce needed products, no? Or kailangan nating because your body needs to survive, kailangan mabilis ang mga chemical reactions. So ganun din dito sa ating mga crop. For example, sa ating rice, no, itong golden rice. So this genetically modified organism uses beta carotenes from our certain type of organism, okay, para makagawa siya ng vitamin A. Kaya itong golden rice is fortified with vitamin A. Okay? So one example, you can also add no vitamins in your GMOs. Okay, number 5, cosmetic preservation. So these are genetically modified plants resistant or that can resist natural discoloration. So, 'di ba? Have you ever tried cutting an apple? So siguro mga 1 minute to 5 minutes after siyang nahati, nagkaroon na ng darkening. Okay? So, itong apple natin, this apple is called Arctic apple. Okay? So, the apple variety was genetically modified to suppress the browning of apple due to superficial damage. So, kahit na-cut mo na siya or na-damage yung kanyang outer covering, hindi siya mag-turn into brown or dark color. Okay, number 6, increased growth rate. I think this one is very important, lalong-lalo na sa agriculture natin, no, for increasing the production or the harvest. Okay, so these are genetically modified organisms that has higher yield in growth than normal species. So, kumbaga pa, mas mabilis yung kanilang growth or pagdami compared doon sa mga normal species natin that did not undergo genetic engineering. One example natin dyan is the aquavantage salmon. So, ito po yung kanyang appearance. So, kung nakita ninyo, the GM or genetically modified salmon is sa appearance pa lang bigger, no? compared sa regular salmon natin. Okay? So, puwede ring yung ating tinatawag na eel-like fish, which is the ocean pout 'no, so puwede rin siyang palakihin using genetic engineering. Okay? Okay. How about in the ano naman kaya ang role 'no ng or genetically modified organisms in non-food crops and microorganisms? So, we're not talking about ano na, agriculture or food. We're talking about, uh, different productions or iba't ibang products such as paper, puwedeng plants, or flower 'no. Number one example is the flower production. So kung nakita ninyo sa picture, this one is a blue rose. Okay? So, have you ever seen in real life a blue rose? Meron na bang nakakita ng totoong blue rose sa inyo? Or naka-receive man lang ng blue rose? Wala pa? So far, none? None of I think ang pinaka-common lang dito sa atin is the red rose, right? So, this is one example. GMO or GMOs in flower production are seen in modified color and extended vase life of flower. So, pwede mo ring pahabain no, yung kanyang lifespan kapag nilagay na or na-harvest na yung ating flowers. One example is our blue rose. So, the blue rose or so-called blue roses, which are initially or in reality lilac or purple in color, contained cyanidine 3,5-diglucoside. Okay, meron siyang cyanidine content together with large amounts of flavonols. So yung flavonols natin, these are just polyphenols no? Present in the skin or sa leaves ng plants. So ang nangyayari dyan, the introduction of the flavonoid gene into our blue roses actually produces delphinidine glucosides. Okay, delphinidine glucosides which produce the blue color in the roses. Okay, so medyo may pagka-biochemistry na talaga yan. Proceed tayo with the paper production. Okay, modified characteristics of trees for higher yield of paper production. Okay, so ang example natin dito is your poplar trees. Okay, so ano ba yung what is the component no within the trees na ginagamit natin for the production of plants no the specific chemical is called lignin. Okay, yung ating lignin. So the lignin is a complex polymer in trees that is removed from wood to make paper. Okay? And inserting genes that code for ferulic acid in young poplar trees will modify the lignin para mas madali siyang ma-break down for the production of paper. Okay, so mas pinapaganda nila yung quality ng lignin within the trees to produce paper no more easily. Okay, number 3 is for pharmaceutical productions. So, meron tayong tinatawag na periwinkle plant. So, ito po yung kanyang appearance. Siguro meron kayo nito sa bahay ninyo. Okay, periwinkle plant. Meron kami nito actually outside, no, outside the house. So, this plant is modified no, to produce pharmaceutical products. For example, yung bacterial genes natin, when we add that to the periwinkle plant, it enhances the production of a chemical called vinblastine. Okay? So, I will type na lang no, para makita ninyo ang spelling. Kindly check the spelling sa ating comment section. But anyway, you can find these sa ating reading material. Vinblastine. Okay. So, iyan po siya. Vinblastine is an alkaloid that is added to drugs to fight cancer. Okay? Ginagamit siya sa cancer treatments. So, example natin dyan is your Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a cancer of the lymphatic system. Okay? So, yung lymphocytes, no? Ano nga ang lymphocytes? What's the other name of lymphocytes? Or, yung lymphocytes natin, nagkakaroon ng nagiging out of control yung kanyang growth. So, marami masyadong napo-produce na lymphocytes and this causes Hodgkin's lymphoma. Okay? So, ang pwede nating panlaban diyan is yung ating periwinkle plant 'no, puwedeng may makuha sa kaniyang chemical, that can be used in production of pharmaceutical drugs. Okay, another one, role is bioremediation. Who has an idea kung ano ang bioremediation? For 3 points. Do you have any idea what bioremediation is? So, any guess from the class? So, hindi na ito siya bago na topic, no? I think you've encountered already the bioremediation topic from your past classes. Okay? Anyone who wants to answer for 3 points? Meron ba? Wala? Walang may idea kung anong bioremediation? Okay, so far wala. Sige, silence means no. So, meaning walang may idea kung ano ang bioremediation. So, when we say bioremediation class, you're actually taking advantage of microorganisms. Okay? Gumagamit tayo ng mga microorganisms to produce products. Pwedeng galing sa microorganisms, pwedeng galing sa plants. Okay? To produce products that will detoxify pollution from the environment. No, kaya nga bioremediation. You are using biological life, no, to decrease the pollution in the environment. Okay, so one example natin diyan is the plant that we call shrub tobacco. Okay, yan po yung itsura niya sa ating PowerPoint. So, ayan, specifically ang kanyang scientific name is Nicotiana glauca. So, this is a shrub tobacco, genetically modified with phytokeratin. So, yung phytokeratin natin is used for bioremediation. Okay? It shows high level of accumulation of zinc, lead, pwede rin siyang pang-absorb ng cadmium, nickel, yung mga heavy metals natin, no, from the environment. Okay? Okay, next. So, enzyme and drug production. So, this is I think ito yung pinaka-common natin, the production of drugs or medicine using genetically modified organisms. So, in enzyme and drug production, you are using modified microorganisms to produce enzymes for food processing and medications. So, ang example natin dito is your CGTAs or cyclomaltodextrin glycosyltransferase. Medyo mahaba yung kanyang name. Okay? You can check that out sa ating material, reading material. Okay? So this is an enzyme that is used for food flavoring or food flavor enhancer. Okay, by the way, class, can you still see the PowerPoint? Hindi ba nawala yung PowerPoint? Nagmo-move yung PowerPoint natin? Is it moving? So, kasi baka hindi nag-move, the internet connection is not stable, no, dito sa aming. Okay ba? Nagmo-move? Okay, sige. Thank you for the response. Okay, so let us proceed. Okay, CGTase. So, isa siyang enzyme that is used for food flavor enhancer and is produced in higher quantity by Bacterium bacillus. Okay, so pwedeng makagawa itong bacillus ng matataas na level ng food flavor enhancer na CGTase. Okay, so genetically modified actually itong ating bacillus with the gene of thermophilic anaerobe carrying CGTase. Okay, so use of microorganism pa rin. Another one is GMO in the medical field. So, ang pinaka-common dito is the use of insulin, no? Production ng ating insulin for the type 1 diabetes patients. Okay, so in GMOs in the medical field, you are using genetic engineering in the diagnosis and treatment of human diseases. No? So it helps in the production of drugs, gene therapy, and laboratory researches. And one example is the product called Humulin N. Okay? So ang Humulin N natin is a genetically engineered insulin na ginagamit ng mga merong type 1 diabetes, no, na mga patients. So, 'di ba, we have two types of diabetes. You have the type 1 and the type 2 diabetes. Sige, lesson ito ng anatomy and physiology. Who can still remember? For 5 points, differentiate type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Okay, ano nga ang pinagkaiba no ng type? Yes, Miss Kapauan. Mhm. Okay, very good. Well said, Miss Kapauan. So tama, you have 5 points by the way. Congratulations. So dagdag pa yan sa inyong CS, no? Our goal is to make our CS plenty for your grade. Okay, correct. So type 1 is all about genetics. So kapag meron kang type 1 diabetes, meaning pinanganak ka na merong diabetes, no? Genetics, kumbaga panamana mo sa inyong parents, no? It runs in the family. So this one is not related to any lifestyle or diet, eh, kasi meron ka na simula nung pinanganak ka. But that does not mean na hindi ka magiging careful 'no, in your diet and in your lifestyle. So dapat maintain pa rin. But, you are actually insulin, dependent. Okay, so kasi ang nangyayari dito sa type 1 diabetes natin, the immune system is actually attacking and destroying the cells in the pancreas that produces insulin. Okay, so hindi makagawa ng insulin yung katawan mo. Kaya nga, every now and then, depending on the dose given by the doctor, mag-a-apply ka, no? Magtuturo ka ng insulin into your body. Okay? But when we say type 2 diabetes, ito siya ang resulta ng madalas na pag-inom ng Coke. Sino dito sa inyo ang always, no, 3 times a day ginawa ng tubig ang Coke at always kumakain ng mga unhealthy food, no, sugary foods. So, and di rin nag-e-exercise, okay? So, lifestyle siya, produced by lifestyle and diet. Okay, so na-acquire mo siya as you get older. Okay, and it will also become extreme, no, habang tumatanda ka. And yun nga, so yun ang pinagkaiba nila. So the humulin is a product or genetically modified insulin na ginagamit ng may mga type 1 diabetes patients. Okay? Ah, so noon kasi, the insulin products are coming from, they are extracted from the pancreas of the pigs and cows, no, yung mga unang products natin ng insulin that is being, uh, given 'no or yung mga mabili ng ating, community, nanggaling siya or it originated from the pancreas of the pigs and the cows. So, ang nangyari dito, it causes allergic reactions to some patients 'no, yung meron siyang mga negative reactions. So, in 1978, ang mga researchers natin from the City of Hope National Medical Center and Genentech Biotechnology Company, they were able to produce human insulin coming from bacterial cells. Okay, so they inserted, or the gene for the insulin is inserted to the bacterial DNA that was able to produce almost exactly the same human insulin. So kumbaga pa kambal, no? Parehong-pareho sa insulin na ginagawa ng humans. And one example of that is the humulin and product. Okay? So yan, for the field, no, of pharmaceuticals. So let us talk about, unahin natin, no, because in this chapter we're going to talk about the benefits of the GMOs, and at the same time, pag-usapan din natin kung ano yung mga, kumbaga pa, inirereklamo ng mga opposing side of this topic, yung negative effects ng GMO. So for the benefits, no, we have seven. Number one is higher efficiency in farming. Okay, so higher efficiency, you're talking about uh, since we are producing genetically modified organisms that are actually pesticide resistant, herbicide tolerant, no, there will be less use of herbicides and pesticides. And it will lower the cost of labor and cultivation. Hindi na masyadong mamahalan yung inyong mga farmers in buying these expensive pesticides, no, and herbicides. Number two, increase in the harvest. Since ang mga genetically modified organisms, they are resistant to pests, no, hindi sila madaling namamatay. So, this will increase, no, the harvest of the farmers. Number three, control of fertility. So, you're controlling the purity of this hybrid seeds. So, pag sinabi nating hybrid seeds, these are genetically modified organism seeds. Okay, so this will also ensure higher yield. Number five, improve the desirable characteristics. So, syempre nga, since you are editing the genes, no, of these organisms, makakapili ka na kung anong type ng characteristic ang pwede mong i-retain doon sa organism na yun. So, yun nga, increase in the or improve, no, the desirable characteristics. Number six, nutritional and pharmaceutical enhancement. So, pwede mo nang lagyan, no, ng kumbaga pa mas maraming nutrients and vitamins yung inyong mga organisms, and also enhance the pharmaceutical use, no, of the products. And the number seven, reduce the use of fertilizer and pesticides. So, ayan. Okay, let us proceed. Okay, now let us talk about the potential risk naman. Kung pinag-usapan natin is benefits, ano naman kaya yung potential risk ng mga GMOs? So despite the promising claims of our GMOs, the opponents of the GMOs claim otherwise. No? For example, in some studies, they show a link in the adaptation of pesticide-resistant GMO crops to significant growth of super weeds that became pesticide-resistant too. Okay? So, ang nangyari, yung mga weeds na kasama ng mga GMO, naging pesticide resistant din sila. And this caused additional problem sa mga farmers, no, in the United States. Okay? So, eto, naglista ang mga opponents ng GMOs ng following major concerns. And number one to them is the inadequate studies on the effect of GMOs to humans in the environment. So, since masyado pang, kumbaga pa, if i-compare mo ang study ng genetic engineering sa ibang branch ng sciences, no, mas bata, no, mas bago itong genetic engineering branch. So, marami pa tayong hindi alam, no, sa magiging effect niya later on sa humans and environment, no. Right now, we are just seeing the picture of its positive effects, no, kasi bago pa siya. So, nakita mo pa lang is ang first effect ng mga products na ito. But later on, ano kaya ang maging epekto niya sa biodiversity, no? Our past lesson is talking about the importance of biodiversity. So, what do you think? Sige, anyone from the class, do you have any idea or ano kaya ang reaction ninyo dito? 'Di ba? From our past topic, biodiversity is affected by even tiny or small changes in the environment or within the ecosystem. So what do you think will be the effect if you will add not genetically a new genetically modified organism sa isang ecosystem? Merong gustong mag share ng kanyang thoughts about this for 5 points? Okay, coming from our last discussion, ano ba, may changes kaya or the ecosystem will remain the same? What do you think? So wala naman ditong wrong and right answer. Just want to hear your opinion about this one. Wala? Walang gustong mag-recite? Sige, I will call randomly na lang. Let's hear the voice of Mr. Raffles. Sige. Good afternoon. Mhm. Okay, very good. Sige, according to Mr. Raffles, thank you, Mr. Raffles. You have 5 points. According to Mr. Raffles, no, the genetically modified organisms daw can cause change in a way that they can produce chemicals, no, that might leak doon sa mga organisms that is also living in the same environment with this GMO. So that is not wrong. Okay? Kahit gaano pa man natin sabihin na ang GMO is the future, for example, but it will still cause change in the environment because again, GMOs are not natural. Okay? Kahit gaano pa ka-careful yung ating mga uh, they call scientists and staffs in the laboratory in producing these organisms, no, they are not natural. Ginawa sila inside the laboratory. So, iba yung kanilang composition. Kumbaga pa, may iba sa kanila na hindi the same with the natural organisms in the ecosystem. Okay? So, in truth, meron siyang change, no? Na mako-contribute doon sa biodiversity natin. And again, a change within the ecosystem will affect the biodiversity, okay, in the environment. So yun naman, I just want to check if naalala pa ninyo yung topic natin na biodiversity. Okay. Sige, let's proceed with the second risk, which is GMOs promotes mutation in organisms which in the long term will affect the effect is still unknown. Eh, so puwedeng mag-cause ng mutation. Bakit? Bakit kaya mag-cause ng mutation? Because again, we are editing the genes, no, of these organisms. So, hindi malayo diyan na later on magkaroon ng mutation within the organism itself. So, ano kaya yung magiging effect, no? For example, ang kinain mo na gulay ay GMO. Tapos, hindi na malaya nagkaroon ng mutation in the long run. So, what is the effect of eating a vegetable that is mutated? No, anong epekto nun sa humans? So, hindi pa natin alam. Kasi nga, bago pa lang. This is a very new branch of science. Okay? So, there are a lot of things that are unknown. Number three, human consumption of GMOs might have the following effects. So, the first one is more allergic reactions. Ah, delikado dito yung mga sensitive. Sino dito ang maraming allergic reactions, no? You must be careful in consuming products, no? Kasi dapat tingnan talaga if GMO ba siya. Because GMO foods may actually trigger more allergic reactions. More so create new ones as side effect of the gene alteration. You are consuming a new type, no? New type of kumbaga pa food 'no, inside if makain itong GMO na ito. So, nag-introduce ka ng bagong type ng food sa system mo. So, if you're very sensitive with certain types of food 'no, it might cause allergic reactions. Number two is gene mutation. So, yung GMO food natin, they may develop abnormalities and mutation more than the desired product of the gene alteration. So, baka ang gusto mong baguhin is yung color lang ng pagkain na ito but nagkaroon na more than change doon sa hindi lang color change ang nangyari, composition change din. Okay? So, gene mutation. Number three, antibiotic resistance. So, hindi ko alam kung aware na ba kayo but in the past years nagkaroon ng maraming propaganda in delivering the message that antibiotic resistance is another huge problem of the world. Bago lang ito siya 'no. If you still remember sa mga balita before, a few years ago, hindi na puwedeng bumili ng antibiotics ng walang reseta ng doktor kasi nga the continuous, consumption of antibiotics without proper diagnosis of the certain type of disease 'no, lalong-lalo na if hindi mo naman talaga kailangan ng antibiotic na gamot pero umiinom ka, this increases the possibility of antibiotic resistance in which your the microorganisms or the pathogens causing your disease will not be affected anymore by antibiotics. So, hindi na sila mamatay kahit ilang penicillin pa ang inumin mo, ilang ano pa ba, clindamycin pa ba ang inumin mo diyan, 'no, because they are resistant to antibiotics. So, GMOs might also contribute to antibiotic resistance because GMO food will contain antibiotic resistant genes. No? This may cause disease causing bacteria likely to be more antibiotic resistant to increasing the possibility of widespread of diseases. Okay? Number four, nutritional value. So, GMO food may have change in their nutritional value. Siyempre, iba sila. They are genetically modified. So, we must assume na iba rin yung kanilang nutrition component. Okay? Doon sa mga normal natin na organisms. So, ayan. Are you still following? Naiintindihan ba ang lesson? Nakakasunod ba? Okay, very good. Sige, let's proceed with the potential environmental risks caused by the GMOs. So, Karki in 2006, he actually summarized no, the perceived potential environmental risks caused by our GMO. So, dito na natin pag-usapan yung epekto ng GMO sa ating environment. Okay? The first one is the risk in gene flow. Okay? Nagkakaroon ng changes sa flow ng genes within a certain type of ecosystem or population. There's a potential risk of the modified gene to be transferred from the GMO crop to its wild relative or organisms living in the soil and sa human intestine kapag kinakain mo siya. No, ito na yung epekto. Pwede daw magkaroon ng changes sa ating gene flow, puwede niyang maapektuhan yung genes 'no, ng mga, organisms na nakatira, sa paligid niya. For example 'no, magbigay tayo ng example, there is a decaying GMO plant 'no, namatay yung plant na yun that is genetically modified organisms. Sino ang magbe-breakdown sa kanya? Sige, review ng inyong microbiology. Who sino yung decomposer, who will decompose these genetically modified organisms? Yun nga, anong type ng microorganism ang involved dito? Maalala pa ba? One example ng ating decomposer? Anyone? For 3 points. So, sige, mag-start ang name niya sa F. And then mag-end siya sa letter I. Dalawang clue na yun. So, ano yun siya? F and I. Starting with letter F and ending with letter I. What type of microorganism is this? Anyone? Wala? Walang nakaalala? Microbiology? So, 'di ba meron tayong ano bang example natin? Ah, wala? Wala talaga? Sige, ako na lang ang magbigay 'no. So, we have okay, sige si Mr. Suan. Mr. Suan, give one example. Okay, correct, fungi. Tama, starting with letter F, ending with letter I, 'no? Meron pang isa, isang example, si Miss Ong nagtaas ng kamay. Okay, bacteria, very good. So these two, bacteria and okay, may naalala pa sa microbiology. Sige, 3 points for Miss Ong and 3 points also for Mr. Suan. Ang mga names ng mga nagre-recite ha, pare-pareho lang. So, how about the others? Walang balak mag-recite 'no? Pangdagdag din 'yan sa class standing ninyo for the finals. Baka makauno kayo 'pag always kayo nagre-recitation, So anyway, bacteria and fungi are examples of uh, organisms that you will or microorganisms that you will find in the soil, no? So, kapag merong decaying GMO plant, no, sila ang nagde-decompose itong GMO plant na ito. The bacteria and fungi are capable of using a genetical they are capable of using the genetic material from their surroundings. No, pwede nilang magamit yung mga na-absorb nila na genetic material in their environment. So what will be the effect no if na-consume nila itong decaying GMO plant, no? Wala pang mga studies about that. Actually, wala pang mga solid studies about this, what the effect no of absorbed modified gene to the decomposers of the environment. So, we will just wonder, 'di ba, that is affecting the gene flow. Kasi merong gene na na-introduce na hindi naman naturally found doon sa mga organisms na 'yan. So, that is one example. Another one is emergence of new forms of resistance and secondary pests and weed problems. Okay, so GMO crops resistant to certain pesticides may trigger new form of pest resistance, no? Pwede yung mangyari. Number three, recombination of virus and bacteria to produce new pathogens. So, the modified gene can be transferred and integrated in the viral and bacterial genes, which may lead to viral or bacterial gene modification or mutation. So, yun pa rin ang final product, no? Mutation of viruses and bacteria. Okay. And then we also have other direct and indirect effects, no? Risk sa ating environment with introducing GMO or genetically modified organisms. Meron daw direkto na effect and meron namang indirect na effect no, sa ating environment. Number one, ng ating direct environmental risk is the introduction of GMOs in the natural environment that may cause disruption of the natural communities through competition. 'Di ba? Tandaan niyo nga sa microbiology, if merong foreign microorganism na nakapasok sa body, no, pwede siyang magkaroon ng competition with the nutrients found inside the body and the microbiota of the body. Mag-aagawan sila sa nutrients, no? So, ganun din dito sa ating environment. Nag-introduce ka ng isang bagong type ng organism and siya ay may sarili ding needs of nutrients. So, this will produce competition within the community. Okay? Number So, yan din, changes din sa ating ecosystem and in the biodiversity. Kasi baka mamaya, mas competitive itong GMO mo kaysa doon sa mga natural organisms na present sa environment, no? So, mas malakas siyang kumain or mag-consume ng nutrients. So, mangyayari, maagawan yung mga natural organisms ng source of food or nutrients. And it will eventually affect their growth, no? And multiplication sa ating environment. Okay, another one, the possibility of unexpected behavior of the GMOs in the environment if it escapes its intended use and may pose threats or become pests. No? So, nag-produce ka ng GMO para ma-solve ang isang problem. Pero ang nangyari, no, the GMO hindi niya ginawa yung kanyang sole, kumbaga use but rather naging peste siya, So, puwede rin yang threat sa ating ecosystem. Okay. Number three, may cause harmful effects to ecosystem processes if GMOs interfere with the natural biochemical cycles. So, yun nga, it causes changes, no, in the ecosystem. And then, lastly, the persistence of GMO genes after its harvest, which may cause negative impacts to the consumer of the GMO products. So, hindi nga natin alam ano yung effect, no, na kapag nag-consume ka ng isang food that is genetically modified. Later on, maybe sa sunod pa natin makita yung effect niya sa human health. Okay. How about the indirect environmental risk? Number one, alteration of agricultural practices like managing negative impacts of GMOs to the environment, such as evolution of insects, pests, and weeds that become resistant to GMO crops. So, magbabago yung kumbaga pa system, no, ng ating mga farmers in managing the impacts of GMO sa kanilang farmland. Eh? Number two, may have impacts to the biodiversity caused by the alteration in agricultural processes. So, ay, yun nga, paulit-ulit lang ang message ng mga paragraph na ito. Changes in the biodiversity. Okay, another one, may have varied environmental impacts due to GMOs interaction and release in the natural environment. Okay. Now let us go to the potential human health risk caused by the GMO. So, we are specifically talking about kung ano na yung uh, pwede niyang maging effect sa katawan ng tao, no? Consumption of GMOs may have adverse effects since it is not naturally or organically produced. Sabi ko nga, hindi ito siya natural na product, no? And it may affect, no? It may cause an effect on the human beings, primarily sa human health. Another one, uh, uh, okay, we have here the mutation or where are we? Consumption of GMOs may alter the balance of existing microorganisms in the human digestive system. Sige, what's the specific name or term na ginagamit natin for all the microorganisms found in the body? So, nabanggit ko siya kanina. Maalala pa ba ninyo? So, ano nga yung term natin for the or microorganisms living in the body? Starts with letter M, ends with letter A. Yes, sino yung nagtaas ng kamay? Sino ang nauna? Si Miss Lidasan? Sige, si Miss Lidasan naman. Okay? Okay, microbiota. Very good. So, naalala pa, microbiota. So, in short, our GMOs, thank you, Miss Lidasan, you have 3 points. In short, itong mga GMO natin, they alter the balance, no, of the microbiota inside the body. Specifically, yung sa inyong digestive system. We have natural microorganisms living within our gut. No, and ang main function nila is to produce vitamins and also help in the digestion of your food. Okay? So kapag nagbigay ka dyan ng ating bagong GMO with new genes, so it might affect your microbiota, specifically the digestive system. Okay? Pwedeng masira yung kanilang kumbaga pa ecosystem, no, within your body. Okay? Okay, production of toxins may be detrimental to the human health. We are still not very sure if yung ating genetically modified organisms are producing toxins, no? Kasi nga wala pang mga research about this one, yung effect sa human body talaga. Yun nga. So it might produce toxins that will damage our body. Another one, production of allergens may have adverse effects on humans. So sabi nga kanina, puwedeng mag-increase yung sensitivity, ng mga taong maraming allergy, 'no? Specifically, when talking about food. Okay, other potential risks that raise major concerns. Number one, Human Genome Project. Okay? Ano nga ang ginagawa dito sa Human Genome Project, 'di ba? We are sequencing, 'no? Nagkaroon ng sequencing ng genes ng humans. Okay? So, mapping of the human genes to provide framework of research and studies in the field of medicine. Sandali lang class ha. I will let my ano muna, palabasin ko muna itong aming alaga dahil gusto niyang lumabas. Kung may naririnig kayo. So, I will be back. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Kinailangan talaga na buksan ang pintuan. So, nilang lumabas. Okay, let us proceed. Human Genome Project. Mapping of the human genes to provide framework of research and studies in the field of medicine. So, bakit kaya? No? Why is this considered a potential risk? Diba? The main function of the Human Genome Project is para makatulong siya with our when in terms of treatments, no, ng mga disease, ganyan. So, bakit meron siyang negative effect? Because the information of the sequence of the genes of the human's class is very important, no? Pinag-aagawan po yan. So, yung mga iba na walang knowledge about the Human Genome Project or wala silang data no ng sequence ng genes ng humans, okay, they are threatened sa kung anong pwedeng gawin ng mga tao na may alam sa genes ng humans. Kasi nga, kumbaga para ito siyang Pandora's box, no? Kapag hawak mo ang knowledge about the human genes and its sequences, para ka na ring, pwede ka nang gumawa, no? Marami ka nang pwedeng gawin in terms of genetic engineering. Okay? So some say na pwede siyang magamit para sa ikasira, no, ng ating, pwedeng mag-produce ng product that can actually give a negative effect sa humans. Okay? Number two, mutation of genetically engineered microorganisms. So, one example natin dyan is, okay, later pa pala yan sa cloning. Mutation of genetically engineered microorganisms. Sa dinami-dami ng the genetically modified bacteria and viruses may actually mutate to become more resistant and virulent that may cause more dreadful diseases. Uh, Imbis na ang main goal is to be used in treatments, baka makaproduce pa siya ng disease. And then lastly is the cloning. So, do you know the name of this ship? Sino ang nakakilala dito sa ship na ito? So, na-take up niyo ito sa biochemistry din. Who can still remember for 3 points? What is the name of this ship? Very famous ito siya actually. Yes, Mr. Balbotin. Again? Wait. Sino si? What is the name? Are you sure? Si Shaun the Sheep, 'di ba cartoons man 'yan si Shaun the Sheep? Sige, how about Miss? Sige, si Miss Flores. Okay, Dali. Correct. So, ito si Dali the Sheep natin, sige, bigyan ko na lang ng 1 point si Mr. Balbotin for the effort and then 3 points para kay Miss Flores. Okay, anyway, Dolly the sheep is the first animal to be cloned, no, in the history of cloning. Okay? So in February 24, 1997, the first mammal named Dolly, uh, a sheep from Scotland, was born through cloning. With its celebrated success came the fear of human cloning. It emerged the ethical issue of man playing God. No? So, pumasok sa isip ng mga tao na if you are able to clone an animal, gaano na lang katagal bago sila mag-clone ng tao. And that is illegal actually, no? Nowadays, bawal po iyang cloning ng human being because Sabi nga nila, "We are not God. We should not play God." 'No? We do not know the effect of cloning a human being. And kung nagkaroon nga ng cloning ng isang tao, hindi sure na yung lifespan niya is the same with a normal healthy person. Eh, puwede siyang magkaroon usually kasi ba sa mga cloned na mga organisms, they are susceptible to kumbaga short lifespan na hindi sila gano'n katagal na mabubuhay kasi nga they are not naturally produced 'no, through sexual reproduction or sexual reproduction. Okay, next. Oh, by the way, 4 na pala. Okay, so it's the end of our ano na, mahaba-haba pa ba ito? I think we are halfway through, but again, yun nga, I want to give you the time para ibigay ko na lang sa inyo yung time next Thursday para makapag-aral. Kasi ba naman, no, kahit ako din estudyante, ayoko nang magklase na kinabukasan examination na 'no. So, kawawa naman kayo, you can use that time na para mag-study na lang kayo. So, what we'll do is I will just require you to read the following. Lahat naman din class ng mga sinasabi ko na information is found on yung material nga, the PDF material. So, i-require ko na lang kayo na basahin na lang po yung mga natitirang ano natin, pages 'no, maikli na lang, for you to yun nga, I will give you the time na lang to prepare for the examination on Thursday. At saka i-finalize natin din on Thursday yung mga bata na nakauno. Nakauno ba talaga? So, more than 90. Pero marami atang nakauno sa inyo 'no, so maraming ma-exempt talaga nito. Eh, so hintayin na lang natin sa Thursday. Kausapin ko yung mga students, I will message you one by one. So, lahat ba kayo nasa GC? Ah, all of you ba nasa GC ba? Meron bang estudyante dito na wala sa GC? Lahat ba nasa GC? Kasi I will notify na lang the students sa GC class, okey lang ba yun? Do you have, violent reactions?